So, what's with Star Trek's writers and time anyway? Since its debut, Star Trek's writers have sent characters through time almost as often as they've sent them to strange new worlds. Characters have been to Great Depression era New York City, Los Angeles in the 90s, San Francisco in the 80s, San Francisco in the 1880s, Los Angeles in 2024, and the Federation in the 32nd century. Typically, Star Trek's time travel stories have featured the protagonist correcting the timeline, protecting the future by changing the past, and of course generally setting right what once went wrong. These stories end with the heroes completing their objective and finding their way back to their own timeline. However, there's been more than one occasion where characters have had one-way journeys through time. With that in mind, I am Marcus Bronzy, this is TrekCulture, and here are 10 characters who've been permanently displaced in time. Number 10. Nero. Introduced in 2009 Star Trek, Nero was a Romulan miner who sought revenge on Ambassador Spock and the Federation for the destruction of Romulus when the planet's sun went supernova. Although Spock successfully extinguished the supernova by generating a black hole with red matter, he was too late to save Romulus. Nero, mad with grief, subsequently attacked Spock's ship with his mining ship, the Narada. Both ships were thrown back in time by the black hole. The Narada arrived in the 23rd century, several years before Spock, and ended up engaging the Federation starship USS Kelvin in a battle, creating an alternate timeline. James Kirk's father, Lieutenant George Kirk, died piloting the Kelvin on a kamikaze attack against the Narada, giving the Kelvin's surviving crew, including George Kirk's wife and newborn son, time to escape. Decades later, Nero captured Spock and made him watch from a neighboring planet as Nero destroyed Vulcan. He then turned his attention towards Earth because the Federation rescinded their offer to aid in the evacuation of Romulus after Rogue Synth destroyed Romulan evacuation fleets. Nero was killed when his attempt to destroy Earth was thwarted by Kirk, Spock, and the crew of the USS Enterprise. Number 9. Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart was a 20th century icon and Catherine Janeway's personal hero. In 1932, Earhart became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. In 1937, she and her navigator Fred Noonan disappeared over the Pacific Ocean whilst attempting to circumnavigate the globe. Both professional and amateur sleuths speculated about what had happened. Theories ran from Earhart's plane being shot down by Japan to Earhart and Noonan flying off on a romantic adventure. Even alien abduction was considered. Enter Star Trek. In the Star Trek Voyager episode, The 37s, the crew of the USS Voyager confirmed the alien abduction theory when they discovered Earhart, Noonan, and 6 others in stasis on a planet in the Delta Quadrant. After the crew revived Earhart and the others, they encountered the descendants of the other 300 abductees. They had explained that their ancestors were taken as slaves and that they eventually overthrew their masters. They established their own society, which now consisted of over 100,000 people in 3 cities. These people, referred to those in stasis as the 37s. Voyager's crew were invited to settle on the planet, whilst Janeway invited the 37s to join Voyager. Ultimately, Voyager's crew declined the invitation, while the 37s elected to stay on the planet. Number 8. Gabrielle Burnham. Michael Burnham's mother, Dr. Gabrielle Burnham, was an astrophysicist, engineer, and Section 31 operative. In the late 2230s, when Michael was still a young child, Dr. Burnham and her husband Mike Burnham took their daughter to the Vulcan outpost, Doctari Alpha, home to a joint human-Vulcan research facility. There they posed as scientists while secretly working on Section 31's time travel program. Whilst they were working on the project, Klingons attacked the outpost while searching for a stolen time crystal the Burnhams had used in their project. Gabrielle hid Michael in the cupboard whilst Mike attempted to barricade the door. However, the Klingons broke into their quarters and killed Mike whilst Gabrielle escaped in the recently completed Red Angel time travel suit. However, instead of jumping back 1 hour as she planned, she was flung into the far future where she learned that Control, Section 31's threat assessment system, had gained the sentience and eradicated all life. She made stopping Control her new mission. With Gabrielle's aid, Discovery overcame Control by taking the data it required into the 32nd century. Arriving in the future ahead of them, Gabrielle eventually joined a Romulan sisterhood of warrior nuns. Number 7. Cristobal Rios. Introduced in Star Trek Picard, Cristobal Chris Rios was a Starfleet officer who discharged after the traumatic events surrounding the murders of 2 Sung-type androids, the subsequent suicide of his former captain, and the resulting cover-up. As captain of an unregistered cargo ship, La Serena, he helped Jean-Luc Picard and the crew face a galaxy-threatening plot. After this threat was thwarted, Rios returned to Starfleet as the captain of the new USS Stargazer. However, it wasn't too long before he was again joining Picard and gang on a mission to save the world. This time they travelled back to 2024 so they could ensure that Picard's ancestor astronaut Renee Picard took part in a crucial space mission. Without her making an important discovery, Earth would become a xenophobic, authoritarian nightmare that they'd been shown by Q. After the mission, Rios stayed in the 21st century. He and Dr. Teresa Ramirez created a charity that provided medical aid to the needy. Teresa's son, Ricardo, eventually used the life form Renee Picard discovered to clean the environment. As of the early 25th century, the Mariposas were still active. Number 6. Philippa Georgiou, Mirror Universe. Terran Emperor Philippa Georgiou was dragged into the Prime Universe by the Discovery's crew after they thwarted Gabrielle Lorca's coup against her. She helped end the Federation Klingon War and joined Section 31. She joined Discovery's crew when they defeated Control, Section 31's threat assessment computer, run amok by taking the data it needed into the 32nd century. She began to experience debilitating flashbacks caused by her molecules trying to return to either their original time or place. Her experience mirrored that of Yor, a Starfleet officer and time soldier who began suffering painful symptoms after they had travelled from the 24th century in the Kelvin timeline to the Prime Universe's 32nd century. Starfleet doctors were eventually forced to euthanize him. Searching for a cure on Danis 5, Georgiou and Burnham encountered an old man named Carl guarding a wooden door. Walking through the door, she found herself in the Mirror Universe. Georgiou's attempt to reform her empire and reconcile with Mirror Universe Burnham ended up in both of their deaths. After her death, Georgiou awoke on Danis 5. Carl revealed that he was actually the Guardian of Forever. He saved her life by sending her to a time closer to her own and into her own standalone film that we effectively call a long trek. Number 5. Khan Noonien Singh, Prime. Khan Noonien Singh was one of the most notorious of the genetically engineered tyrants. At his peak, he dominated nearly 1.25 billion people. After the tyrants were overthrown, Khan and his followers escaped execution aboard a sleeper ship, SS Botany Bay. The Enterprise crew discovered Khan more than 200 years later. He promptly tried to seize their ship. Captain Kirk exiled Khan and his followers to SETI Alpha 5, believing that supermen would thrive there. Unfortunately, it actually became a wasteland when its neighboring planet exploded. Khan swore revenge after several of his people, including his wife, were killed by desert-dwelling eels. Years later, Khan learned of a Project Genesis, a system for making barren worlds livable, created by Kirk's ex-girlfriend, Carol Marcus, and her son, David. Khan seized Genesis and got Kirk's attention. Khan, commanding the stolen USS Reliant, attacked the Enterprise. Although Khan initially had the advantage, Kirk had way more experience. Luring the Reliant into the Matara Nebula, Kirk struck a fatal blow and mortally wounded Khan, who then activated the Genesis device. Unfortunately, Spock died-ish when he was trying to repair the warp drive in time to escape. The Matara Nebula was actually transformed into a new planet that became Spock's resting place. Number 4. Gillian Taylor. In 1986, Dr. Taylor was contacted by James T. Kirk and former crew of the USS Enterprise about the Institute's humpback whales, George and Gracie. Kirk and his crew had traveled back in time in their stolen Klingon ship, the Bounty, to save Earth from a powerful alien space probe. Spock had discovered that the probe was trying to contact its good old buddies, humpback whales. Unfortunately, humpbacks were extinct in the 23rd century. Whilst Kirk could have taken the whales from the wild, he preferred George and Gracie since Spock had discovered through a mind meld that Gracie was pregnant. Taylor agreed to aid Kirk, but unfortunately, due to a budget constraint, the Institute was forced to return the whales to the wild. As Kirk was prepared to depart for the whales' last known location, Taylor jumped into his arms as he beamed aboard the Bounty. She explained that without the whales, she had no reason to stay in San Francisco, and that in the 23rd century, they probably needed a whale expert. In the 23rd century, she joined a science vessel so she could catch up on 300 years of biology. Number 3. Michael Burnham. Michael Burnham was serving as the USS Discovery's science officer under Captain Christopher Pike when she realized that Discovery's computer contained information that Control wanted so it could develop sentience and destroy all organic life. Using the Red Angel time travel her mother invented, Burnham guided the Discovery through a wormhole into the 32nd century out of Control's reach. Unfortunately, Burnham arrived in the future a year ahead of Discovery. She joined forces with Cleveland Booker as a courier and encountered the Orion-led crime syndicate, the Emerald Chain, and learned that much of the Federation had collapsed after an event called the Burn. It destroyed most of the galaxy's dilithium. Burnham reunited with her crew and they contacted the remainder of Starfleet. The Discovery was refitted with 32nd century technology, and Burnham and her crew discovered the cause of the burn and later fought off the Emerald Chain's attempt to take over their ship. When Saru left to take the Kelpian at the heart of the burn back to Kaminar, Burnham became Discovery's captain. With Burnham in command, Discovery continued its mission of exploration and discovery, including contacting the beings outside of the Milky Way who inadvertently threatens our galaxy. Number 2. Spock, Prime. In 2387, the Romulan sun threatened to go supernova. All Spock had to do to save Romulus was fly an advanced spacecraft, the Jellyfish, to the star and turn it into a black hole by injecting red matter into it. Super easy, right? No. Unfortunately for Romulus, the star went supernova before Spock could inject the red matter. With other inhabited systems still in danger, Spock created the black hole and extinguished the supernova. But before Spock could warp away, the Jellyfish was attacked by a Romulan mining ship, the Narada. Both ships were flung back in time to the 23rd century, creating an alternate timeline. After being forced to witness Nero's destruction of Vulcan, Spock encountered a young Kirk. He gave Kirk some sage advice about being Captain Kirk, and after Kirk and the Enterprise crew thwarted Nero's attack on Earth, Spock helped to establish a colony of New Vulcan. When the alternate reality Enterprise encountered Khan, Spock told his younger self that it had taken great sacrifice to stop Khan. For obvious reasons, he didn't mention whose. Although Spock had previously died and gotten better, he finally succumbed to death by natural cause on New Vulcan, aged 161. Number 1. Morgan Bateson. Captain Morgan Bateson was introduced in Star Trek The Next Generation episode Cause and Effect. In 2278, he was commanding the USS Bozeman when it encountered a temporal distortion and collided with the USS Enterprise D in 2368. The resulting explosion of the Enterprise D ruptured the space-time continuum and locked both ships in an endless loop, with the Bozeman colliding with the Enterprise D, followed by the Enterprise D exploding and triggering a whole new loop. Although the crew of the Enterprise D eventually broke the loop, the Bozeman and her crew were now trapped in the 24th century. Bateson eventually continued his career in Starfleet, and in Lower Decks, the episode Grounded, Bateson was instrumental in proving that Captain Carol Freeman of the USS Cerritos had been framed for the destruction of the Pac-led homeworld. Bateson's career was fleshed out in several Star Trek novels, short stories, and comics. Ship of the Line, for example, depicted the events leading up to the temporal causality loop, the crew adapting to life in the 24th century, and their eventual assignment to a new USS Bozeman that participated in the Battle of Sector 001 in Star Trek First Contact. So there you have it, Star Trek's 10 characters permanently displaced in time. If you've got something to add to the conversation, feel free to in the comments below. And of course, like and subscribe. You can find us on Twitter at TrekCulture or Instagram at TrekCultureYT. I'm on all social medias at MARCUSBRONZY, and you can check out my award-winning podcasts, How to Kill an Hour and Ain't Got a Clue, wherever you listen to yours. Until next time, peace.